welcome back. Okay, now living abroad, I've learned a lot about culture and everything, but I think one of the most impactful things that I have learned is about Blackness from Africans who live around the world. And I'm going to share what I have discovered and what I've really come to realize about being Black, about how Africans view American Blacks, as well as slavery and some of the history associated with Africa and American Black people. So subscribe, do all of the things, make sure you turn on notifications, and I'm going to share some really interesting things that I have learned. So go ahead, subscribe, like, all of those things. Set your notifications so when I'm dropping gems, you know. But I'm going to tell you what I have learned, and really the real truth that Black Americans are more American than they really realize. So let's chat. Now, there are so, I don't even know where to begin, because I don't want this to be 3 hours long, but I'm going to tell you, one of the things I've always heard was like, Africans don't like American Blacks, right? They don't like African Americans. And it's an interesting point of view, but I think some of the history with Black Americans and our thought process is that, we were taken away from our home country, our home continent, right? And shipped off to another country, and basically we all know the history. And there are sometimes contentions when Black Americans feel like Africans come to the States and they think that they're better than us. I don't know if that's just something self-perceived, because the history with African Americans, Black Americans, and Africa is very heavy. It's very complicated. But I don't know. I will say that I know some Africans in America. I've never really had any issues with any sort of feelings that they treated me with in sort of inferiority. Now, that's just my experience, and I know people have way different experiences, but there's an overarching idea there. And that Africans don't sympathize enough with Black Americans and their plight and what they've been through. After all, we were taken away from our motherland. Oh my goodness, why we have so many mother issues, right? So we're taken away from our motherland, and we want them to recognize what atrocities fell upon us once we were gone. Now, there's all how can they do this to your people? And I'm going to tell you the overarching idea that I have gotten and understand from Africans is that we are not their people. Not to say we're not Black and not from African descent. However, slavery during this period of time, now, let's just say Africa has been around for millennia, okay? Hundreds and thousands of years, there's been Africa. During all of this time, there has been slavery. Before our ancestors set on American soil, there was slavery in Africa, okay? There was terrible atrocities done to Africans by Africans. Now, the unique thing about what was happening to the ancestors of Black Americans is that these atrocities were being done simply because they were Black, simply because they were, white people were trying to control them on a whole different level, right? But those Africans who let those people take our ancestors away were paid well. That was what they did, and they did not care. They did not think anything of it, because it is what one did during these periods of time. slavery was commonplace. In fact, slavery in Africa was very similar to the slavery that ancestors experienced in the United States, right? Very similar. And not only was it brutal, there was also religious and ritualistic things that Africans did to their slaves. And they did not see those people as their people. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, so they were actually saying, this person is nothing like me. Even if we share the same skin, even like those things didn't matter. And that his attitude is very much centristic in Africans in general. Okay, this is in general. They don't necessarily see a kinship between two black people just because they're black. And that is something that was very different in the United States. That's how we ended up making kinship, because of racism that was based on skin color. The things in Africa wasn't based on skin color. These people who looked like you would do these atrocities to you, and that was normal. So that kinship, when Africans see other black people and they know that they are not of the same kin, it's not a like, ooh, yay. You know what I mean? Like, they don't care. They truly just don't care. So that's one of those things where I think there's some carryover, and I mean, this is probably a different type of discussion, a whole nother discussion, but some carryover in the disconnect sometimes, I think, between black people, because we were forced together to basically say, because we are the same skin color, we're having the same problems, we're family. And that was forced by white people, because we had to be. But if we were in Africa, we would not necessarily have interacted with some of those people that we interacted with, after arriving in the United States, in America. So these are things like, when you start thinking of the mental development of Black Americans versus Africans, you can start seeing like why there's so much disconnect. Because Africans don't even understand why we're still talking about slavery. They don't understand what slavery has happened. It had happened. It's done. You have moved on. Move on. Because that's what they would have done, right? Like when times changed, things changed. And one of the most important things that I realized, that a lot of Black Americans filter their view of Africa from what we have learned from whiteness. And I don't mean like, like there's poverty and people living in sand huts with flies around them, those kind of things. I'm not talking about that. What I'm talking about is that we see Africa as this vulnerable place, right? This place that white people have taken advantage of. And I'm not saying that that's not true, but we filter it through that. Africans don't necessarily see that to be the case. Even the things that are happening today with like Chinese coming in and doing different things, a lot of them are like, you know what, the government has allowed it. Whether I agree with it or not, they are not doing anything more than what they're allowed to do. And that's the same thing throughout history. They sold Black people into slavery. They sold Africans into slavery to go to Americas. They made money on that, right? So it was a choice. No atrocities are ever done without the people of those people agreeing to it. I mean, the same things happen in so many different eras of time. And this is why I think, because Africa has been around for a millennia, they don't even see colonization the same way as Black Americans see it. Because conquerors have come and conquerors have gone, right? America's been America since, they poured tea in the Boston Harbor and all that stuff. Like, America has been America. Canadians haven't come down at some point in time and turned everyone Canadian, and then Russians came in and turned everyone Russian, and then America came back, like we fought for our freedom. Like, those things haven't happened. those things have happened in multiple places in Africa. So, you know, when white people invaded and white people won, that was a period in time, and now it's not that way anymore. Move on. Like, they are seriously evolved in this kind of mindset where, and I think it is because of history and long history, that you understand that power changes, things happen, and they don't see it as something that happened to them because they are African, because they are black, because they, you know, they don't see it that way. It's just, and that is because, guess what? A neighboring country full of black folks could do the same thing that those white people did to them, you know, or did to their country. There's no difference. So they don't see it filtered that way. Whereas Black Americans see that filter. We see that because of what our history has been in the United States, right? These are things that I'm going to tell you have changed my mindset about so many different things and helps me view Blackness, America, American Blackness through different filters. And I'm still working on some of those ideas, but what I have really what I've really learned is that a lot of the ways we think as Black Americans is because we are American. Simple, right? Like, we have adopted some of those supremacist ideologies simply because we are American. We see Africa as, like, even, you know, Black Panther, right? There was the, you know, hey auntie, Killmonger. We were saying, you know, a lot of people were interpreting that as like, hey auntie, I'm home, right? Because this is the prodigal son that they left in America, not to inherit his kingdom, not to get the things that he was rightfully born into. So a lot of people interpret it that way. And okay, sure, like, that's an interpretation. Africans would not even think in this manner. They wouldn't think this way of ownership of something just because you weren't those people. Like, you're not their people. Is basically what it comes down to, right? Like, you weren't a part of anything, because what they would think is, if you were my people, I would not have done that to you. The ancestors would not have done that to you if you were their people. It's very, very simple that way. So our ancestors were not their people. We're not their ancestors' people. You get what I'm saying? So we are still in love with the fact that we feel like our mom abandoned us, right? The motherland. We were taken away. You know, our ancestors, those ancestors were overpowered by white colonists. They just took some money for us and said bye-bye because they didn't want us there. That was the whole thing. They did not want our ancestors there. So that's why they got rid of them. And they weren't their people, right? So, like, that acceptance and understanding, and I'm not saying like you could go to Africa and have a beautiful life right now. That's not what I'm not saying you can't do that. But what I'm saying is that we have romanticized these concepts, ideas, and general feelings about Africa and the countries in it because we feel like we don't have a home, right? When the truth of the matter is, if we were truly African, America would be it. That's home, right? We're a descendant of people who were enslaved. However, that's not who we are anymore. And that's it. We make our life and everything. And so the other thing that I wanted to say, Black people often talk about Africans wanting to identify more with white Americans than they do Black Americans. And this is actually a matter of classism, right? So a lot of times Africans have very little experience with Black Americans. In fact, they're just like some people like in Asia or other countries that have never seen a Black American before. It's very possible. So their concept of us is what they see on TV. It's, I don't know, rap videos and reality TV shows that they get there. So those aren't necessarily the best. People can draw their own conclusions from those type of things based on their culture. Now, when they come to the United States, because Africans are classist more than anything else, they want to identify, connect with who they think is the higher class and in power. If that was Black Americans, that's what they would do. They would try and connect and compete or try and connect with Black Americans. But since they do not see Black Americans as on top, they're going to connect with the people that they see are on top. It's about class and money, and that's it. If you were a Black American and they thought you were on top, then it would be the same kind of deal based on class. And that is actually something that is prevalent across most of the world. These are just a few things, and I don't want to go too far because I can talk about other things. When you guys have questions or comments and want to, you know, explore another topic based around this and what I have discovered, and even just how I think about myself in the world as a Black American is evolving and changing, just from some of the perspectives that I have learned from Africans across the world, Africans as well as indigenous people, to be honest with you. So that's going to be, man, I think it was a little, I don't know, even when I talk about it, I feel more and more ideas and thoughts about why we are the way we are as Black Americans when I start thinking about what I've learned from Africans. So subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Follow me on Instagram. Come on over and leave me some comments. I really want to hear your thoughts. I want to know what you think. I hope you guys want to engage, because I feel like this could evolve into a can of worms on things that I have discovered. So yeah, that's it. Ciao, ciao for now.